Greetings and salutations for another version of On the 50 with Coach Moeller. And these are always fun now that you've got 31 consecutive NWOL wins and you start out 43-7 at half, and, we're a 7-win team. And these conversations get kind of easy when you're playing pretty well. And we'll get at Evergreen in a second, but you guys meet on Sundays. That's the historical time coaches meet. You do some work on Saturday mornings. Broadly, what do you think about your football team this morning?
Well, we obviously like where we're at, and we've done a lot of good things. We're at this point we're trying to get to another level. We talked heavily about that at our meetings. What do we need to do to get to playing at another level, and that's hard, especially when you have a lot of success and kind of your formula has been working. Um, but we want to do more. And so we started talking about it last week, and then um, evaluating everything from the game. I don't know that we're at that next level yet, but we're going to have tougher opponents coming up, and we feel like if we want to be as good as we can possibly be, we got to get to another level. So that's going to be the focus and the struggle here as we end the season is what do we got to do to get better.
It was funny. It was we beat PH, and it was exciting because it's a rivalry. And we talked about that, how you guys look at those games internally, and how the fans do, and commentators. And I just like winning that rivalry game, and you do too. But I go in the coach's office to and you guys were looking at numbers, and it was kind of, it was a good win, and there was excitement. The kids were excited, but when you're doing this every day of the week, and you have made it a mantra, I talked to Brian a little bit, Hefflinger, and a little bit to Eric Weimer, and they kind of say the same things. We're working to beat the best team in the state of Ohio. I mean, yeah, PH was in front of us. We got to get that done. Evergreen on the road, Bermuda Triangle. We never play well up there, but we're really working to win the toughest game, the best game, the last game. That is really kind of it seems like an elite formula. Culturally has worked, but man, that's a process that you've had to really build, hasn't it?
Well, and that's the word you just used there is what we got to really focus on is not the final product that we want a game. We want to look at the process.
Yeah,
How do we get to that? And sometimes your process during the week isn't as good as what you want it. And you have to have your process at an extremely high level, your preparation, and we talk about this all the time. It's not just what we're doing on the practice field. It's our nutrition,
yeah,
our hydration, our hygiene, taking care of ourselves because we don't get sick, our rest. Those are all things that we want to do at an elite level. And with high school kids that are teenagers, they don't always do that at an elite level. They don't always get the proper nutrition. They don't always get the proper rest. Um, and so those are things we're constantly harping on, and we try to use examples of kids we know. Hey, this kid this week did this at an elite level, and this is what we all need to be doing. Um, so we don't want to look at the outcome all the time. We want to
hmm
focus on the process, and we try to be very process oriented.
when do you look at the outcome? And I mean, I love that. I think it's great. But you guys play a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge fan of the OHSA and this playoff system. I think they've made a nice little adjustment here, even though you don't probably want a week off. I think it's great. We could use more adjustments. It's a lot of games. It's a lot of hitting. It's a lot of practice. It's a lot of time. If you don't take that first week and finally get a bye, you got two scrimmages and essentially 16 games to win a title. That's more than the NFL and the Big Ten, big fella. So I know you had to build
Mm-hmm.
around, and I know you're not going to win a state championship every year either. But in your head, you're building that calendar. But at some point, when do you bask in the outcome? Because you don't. You just
Uh,
simply don't.
it's hard. I mean, Friday night, you look at we
For an
won,
hour,
yeah,
for 1 hour, right?
and then Saturday, you kind of go back and you start to
Yeah.
evaluate and reevaluate. At the end of the season, you know, you can look back and enjoy the success you had,
Yeah.
but it's hard because it's just constant. It's constant all the time. And you hear college and NFL coaches, it's hard to enjoy
Yeah.
the wins because you're constantly moving on to the next thing. So, um, and you don't want to be stagnant. And
Yeah.
sometimes if you sit back and enjoy all of the accomplishments you had, you get stagnant. Um, and when you do that, somebody's bypassing
You know, the NFL football life, my favorite one is Vince Lombardi. Lombardi wins the game on Sunday, has the highball party in his basement. About 8 o'clock, he starts thinking about the next opponent, and he dismisses himself and goes to the office. Wait a minute, you just won an NFL game, you've won some titles. You're Vince Lombardi, and even him, after about 3 hours, a little bit like you. That's it. I have my 2 highballs, all my friends, back to the office, right? And that's how you're wired. That's how coaches are wired.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. It's hard. You want to enjoy it. You do enjoy it. You have to force yourself to take it in and enjoy it, but then there's more work to be done.
We talked to you in July, and I think you probably enjoy the season prior in July when you're getting an ice cream cone with your family. How you doing? And you're probably thinking, it was a good year. It was really nice. And then you get back to the 7-on-7 preparation. Tito Francona just got his Reds to the playoffs, and they're celebrating with the champagne, and he's got the goggles on, and they interview him. He says, yeah, we're going to enjoy this for about an hour. On to the Dodgers, and they got swept. But the bottom line is that not basking too much allows you to think about getting prepared, and that's why this program is so good right now. 57-7 win over Evergreen in a place that traditionally, we talked about it last week, we haven't played very well over the years. And I think this time it was a different story, 43-7.5. Other than, I think, the explosive play you gave up, and we're going to talk about that a little bit because there's not a lot of flaws in this football team. But the response to the early score, Evergreen, that answers on a big play, I'm sure that there was a little trepidation on your end. But, talk about your first half and really being prepared to get this one going early.
No, we obviously wanted to get off to a fast start, and we did.
Yeah.
We got obviously the halftime lead, but even that, you go back and look, there's so much we can get better at, that we need to do better at. We can't rely on just being bigger than people or stronger than or faster, because eventually you're gonna run into teams that are equal to you.
Yeah.
And the thing that kind of separates when teams athletically are even in strength and size and stuff like that are the fundamentals. So we really want to look at those and make sure that we're executing our assignments the way we should and our fundamentals are good. So there are some things in the first half that we look at and this isn't good enough. Week 7 Evergreen, it might be good enough, but when you talk about week 12, week 13, that stuff isn't good enough. So
how difficult is it for you as a coach and as an educator and now a long-time coach and teacher? And, kids in your classroom, same thing. You've got a team right now. It's pretty good. And by all rating systems and all polls and all these things, you're real good. You're not living there. And I know it's hard because your kids it's hard. You're social media and Instagram, and here we are, number 1 in the power rankings that don't even exist. It's just some guy making things up, and wow, we're number 1 in the state. No, you're really not until you win the last game.
Right.
But how hard is it for you and your staff to keep that gap of how good you are, yet the opponent you're maybe playing isn't a state championship game level, and keeping those expectations pushing towards this level, then sink into maybe an Evergreen's good, but it's not going to be. They're not going to be sitting there at Canton, in week 16. So how do you keep that gap tight, Coach?
We talk about it all the time, starting in August.
Yeah.
That you always like to be an underdog, but we're at the point now, and
Casey, you've been an underdog for quite a long time.
We recognize now that since 2022, we're going to be picked to win our league, mentioned in the region, things like that. Now people talk about us at the state level, but all that talk is rat poison, and that's a big Nick Saban thing. It's all rat poison,
right.
Because you're focusing on external things. We need to focus on the internal things, and that's part of the process. So if you allow, what people say about you, whether it's good or bad, and this is a John Wooden, you're going to get praise sometimes. Some of it deserved, some of it not deserved.
Yep.
If you let it affect you, that's bad. If you get criticized, some of it will be deserved, some of it will not be. If you let that affect you, that's bad. So we've got to just take all the praise and criticism and shut it out and just focus on getting better, focus on our team and our teammates, and constantly it's a process. You're never where you want to be, but you're constantly working towards it, and you talk about it, make sure the kids are aware of it. And human nature is to, when somebody praises you, all right, kind of pat yourself on the back, and we got to get away from that. And sometimes you got to teeter the line to praise kids when they do good, but you don't want to beat them down and make them think, man, I'm no good, when we're 7-0, and we've done some good things, but it's a balance.
Corporate football at its best. Liberty Center 7-0, or a 7-win team after a very important win over Evergreen, a team that was looking for a big, as you said, a big win at their at their home field, and they had, I think it was you said homecoming? Was it homecoming? I wasn't there. I was in Arizona giving my daughter a car, but drove 27 hours. But listened to it, big crowd, very very electric in the pregame, and not saying that Evergreen can't do that, but I thought that was as excitable as I've ever seen an Evergreen crowd.
I think that's the biggest Evergreen crowd I've ever seen, and that was walking out for pregame. They had as many fans there as we did,
which is just uncharacteristic for us.
Yeah, and Evergreen has a good team. They had a parade for their homecoming and stuff, and I think that brought a lot of people out. They have a big band, and I think that helps. So it was a nice atmosphere, a good crowd, and it was good for us to be in that kind of environment.
Well, sure, you preached all week about going in and being prepared to do this, get started off right. Let's not take this game for granted. This isn't just another game. It's the game of the week. And a 43-7 first half, I would say the flaw was the answer to go 7-7, 7-7. They gave up an explosive, and you being kind of a DB guy at your roots, they're going to make plays. They had some athletes. I mean, you knew that going in. They had speed, and you knew that they could threaten us on the perimeter, and they just did just that. What was your response to that play? Because then after that, I mean, they did go end up 13 for 19 for 212 yards in the passing game, but I felt that response from Evergreen stung us a little bit.
Yeah, and there are a couple of things. What you want to do is, okay, what happened? Why did that happen?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors in that. What happened? Our fits weren't right. So the way we want to take on blocks on that type of play was not where we wanted to be. Maybe our effort wasn't great because we had just scored and gone up, and we thought, okay, here we go, and then we let our guard down a little bit. So those kind of things, you look at effort, how are we taking that on, and make sure you clean that up. They were pretty efficient in the passing game. They had that huge explosive play, but most of their, receptions were underneath those quick jailbreak screens, some swings to the backs. Their quarterback could extend the play and things like that. And we gave up another explosive when the quarterback's scrambling and we got two guys flying at him, and we leave a guy open in coverage and he just dumps it. And so we haven't had that much this year. So that's a huge coaching point, especially as we move forward. That when a quarterback breaks contain, it can't have DBs running after him to make a tackle because their responsibility is to defend the pass. So we kind of have to go over that scramble drill a little bit, and we haven't done a ton of that, and that's part of coaching. We got to get to that.
That's the Bill Belichick do your job kind of thing, and you break down a little bit, and you got a chance to taste Evergreen speed a little bit. You knew it was there,
right,
and you've done a great job of covering it up and having the right schematic approach. But man, you get a guy like a couple of those guys, those dudes outran us, and that early touchdown, you got a taste of that speed. So I think the kids realize, whoa, they may not be on our level completely as a team, but if you give them a bunch of free a bunch of free completions, they're a problem in the open field.
Well, and that's why you like to see that speed in the regular season because we'll see it in the postseason.
For sure.
But when you have guys with elite speed like the Reitz kid from Evergreen, you got to take on blocks correctly and you got to take good angles. You take a bad angle and you're not going to catch them. So we got to make sure we do that and really focus on that and have the kids understand that I got to be in this spot because if I'm not, they're going to make a play.
Rushing game got on track. Offensive line really dominated early in this game, and you had some good rushing performances. Certainly, I think you had Moeller with about 70 yards on 6 or 7 carries. Your wing got your 93 yards and some big explosive plays, which is not necessarily that first role for Baxter Barrett. But Garrison Cruz, 202 yards on 7 totes, and we knew that was a vulnerability for Evergreen, and that's a strength of ours. And we moved Evergreen around, and there was a lot of offensive opportunity in the run game. Talk about Garrison and the rest of your running back room. They'd had a really nice football game.
Well, that starts up front. I thought our guys up front did enough to open up some holes. And when Garrison gets to level 2 and level 3, the
tough.
Interest in tackling him decreases.
Or the disinterest.
And so, what do you say? I mean, the kid's big, fast, and strong, and he's hard to bring down if you're interested in it. And I don't know that a lot of people are interested. Sometimes you look at film and it's like this guy's like faking I'm going towards him to tackle him,
Yeah.
but or I'm going to dive and make it look like I'm tackling.
My film effort looks good, but I knew what I was doing the whole
Right,
time.
making a lot of business decisions. But you know,
We say that a lot in the booth. That was a business decision, and Garrison finishes the run. But there was a couple dudes that could have tried to tackle him better than that.
well, and this is a credit to Garrison. I mean,
For sure.
he's uber talented and super work ethic in the off season. But it takes 11 guys, and we've got all kinds of guys that are trying to help each other, and that's something we're focusing on is, be a blessing to somebody else, man. What can I do to help this guy? And we've got a lot of guys that will do that, and then others reap the rewards, and then you reap the rewards as well. So Garrison, just another typical game for him, and if he had more carries, he'd probably be setting a lot of records.
Yeah. You're just not going to do that. That you've never done that. You're just not going to do it.
We have other weapons. You want to be balanced, not just in run pass, but who are you distributing the ball to? Where are you distributing the ball? Give guys opportunities. And he's got 57, 60 carries on the year in 7 games, and it's like a pitch count. You don't want him taking 25 shots a game for 10 games and then roll into the postseason and you're battered, bruised, and bloodied and just limping. So we want to try to stay fresh and again put on film, show teams that you can't just stop this guy. You've got other weapons you got to defend, and hopefully that prevents them from loading up the box, because we do have guys that can beat them, a team in a lot of different ways.
And you got Jackson Lonizak and Ethan Gray in the passing game, who are big, big play makers in the passing game. But go back to your running back room, and again, it's good to get this late in the season. You can start to look at things a little bit more in depth. And in this particular show, we can do that. But and Tyler Roars fits right into that had he been playing. But the idea that Garrison could be your halfback, and Baxter could be your fullback, and Thomas could be he's all three. He's played all three. I mean, you got these guys are interchangeable. Not that they all know the roles of all those plays and the intricacies weekly that you do, but you really have a diverse backfield. You can do a lot of different things with that thing.
Yeah, when you get into the meat of the season, you want to have guys that are maybe a starter here but can play this position if need be, and you got a backup that can come in.
And Cole Spangler's a guy that you could bring into a game, and you got some other guys that are capable, but all these guys can play these positions. I mean, Garrison's been a wing. Mm-hmm. Your son can he runs like a fullback, a traditional wing T fullback. So it's kind of neat to have those weapons of diversity, in my opinion.
When we practice and drill, it's a lot of things just skills that you can do at either position. And then we have some periods where if guys are not on special teams, they're working on a secondary position. Thomas will work on his football or his fullback footwork. Garrison's working on taking a snap in case he's in the wildcat type stuff, and we're doing that because we're limited on time in season with our drill work. So if we can't get that stuff done with our drills, we're stealing time in other places where, okay, I'm not actively on special teams, I'm going to go work on this stuff. So we try to do that. That way those guys are prepared if we need them to move a position or something like that.
Well, we've been very lucky, obviously, losing Tyler Roars early. Getting Sonnenberg back into the lineup has been great. You guys have avoided, other than the injury to Roars, which was extremely unfortunate, and we're still stinging from those things because you hate to lose such a great player and a senior. But that managed practice, a lot of technique, a lot of technical work, a lot of schematic work, but not necessarily all the physicality. That takes a very measured approach, knowing you've got an extended season. Vickers would always tell his players at Delta, guys, we might be close to being done. Liberty's got half a season left through week 8. He talks about that when he talks to his team. Like, they're exhausted. It's week 8. Woo, a lot more football to be played. So to try to limiting pitch counts, understanding the duration of the season, that takes a lot of planning from you guys.
Well,
that's a lot, Case.
Yeah, it does. When you're trying to build depth as well,
right,
it does lend itself to, we don't need this guy to get 30 reps in practice at this position. We can give him 20 and get this guy 10 and build a little depth, and we save his body a little bit and things like that. But you got to balance that with, giving them enough reps so that in the game they're prepared
And
for
sharp,
what they
ready to
see.
go.
You know, I don't know how many games we've had this year where we've prepared for this defense that they show in film, and then we get something completely different.
Right.
And it's like, all right, we got to make sure we know what we're doing, and it's not, you know, it can't be a robot. We talk about that a lot. You got to be able to adjust on the fly, but you know, it's constantly a balancing act and getting guys reps. And if a guy's struggling a little bit, we might need to get him more reps until he can get it down. So, but our assistant coaches do a great job of making sure they get the guys in that need to get in and rep.
Talk about one of the most important factors to the success of your team that you don't talk about a lot, but now that you're approaching week 8, Amanda, our athletic trainer, who's been synonymous. We've had great ones for a long time, but she's really keeping these kids. She's taking care of them. She's, you know, when you have a bump or bruise, she's in there working. After the PH game, we got 2 kids in there. She's icing them, you know, getting work in and preparing them for the next week or preparing them for a choke down look at a week's practice. But Amanda does a great job and has been a huge part of why these kids have been healthy and on the field.
Well, probably, you know, one of the great things about having Amanda, she's been around a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And she has developed a great relationship with these guys. You know, she's probably the last one to leave the locker room most nights because guys will be in there getting treatment afterwards, and she does some cupping and things like that just to, you know, make sure these guys' bodies feel as good as they possibly can. And, you know, the ice work, the rehabbing and things like that, but also making sure that, okay, get your work done during this time and then get back out to practice.
Yeah.
You know, you're not hanging out here where the trainer's room can become a hangout for people. And it can become contagious, and she does a good job of get back out on the fields. Is great a relationship as she has with the guys. She doesn't want to hang them out in her office.
Get back to work is her job.
But she does a great job with that, and understands that the goal is to get them back on the field. But at the same time, she's going to protect them and make sure they're not going to do something, you know, silly where they're going to get hurt more.
I've talked to a lot of older guys that played here, and Norm Decker and Ron Rollins and Rex Lindgren and Jim Meeker, they didn't have a whole lot of training room, and they were doing things with hydration that would be illegal today. And we played for Rex Lindgren, and there was a broken the stainless steel hot tub that was never used, and Rex Lindgren did all the work, and you're like, no interest in any of that. That room got no activity. So I mean, I understand the balance between, hey, I want to feel better, but this is kind of cool to hang out here. Rex Lindgren, we didn't do that. That wasn't how we did things back then. So there is a balance between keeping kids healthy and getting them ready to go, but yet not making that a habit. So, right. And I think Amanda's struck that great balance for you and been a huge part of your success.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let's talk about Delta a little bit. Put Evergreen away 57-7, and again, really happy to go up there and finally put something on them because I just feel like that's just something we don't do very often. Delden, Mike Vickers, another Hall of Fame coach. You know, you've got a few of these guys in this league, and Bill Inspin's one, and Mike Vickers now, over 200 wins. He's won more at Delden than anybody else, I think, historically. I think there was some good coaches maybe in the 50s and 60s, but Mike's a great coach. Wherever he goes, everybody gets better, and Mike's brought that to Delta. I think this is his second or third stint there, and he shows up, and they're all of a sudden a 7-8 win team. Talk about Mike Vickers and how this Delta team sets up this week.
Well, with Coach Vickers, you're going to get a team that is kind of no nonsense, and they're going to be fundamentally very good. He's extremely well prepared.
Yep.
He's been around the game a long time. He knows what he's going to do. He knows what he's looking for, and he has answers. When, you know, defensively, if you're doing something, he knows what he's going to go to. Offensively, if you're doing something that, you know, it's be fundamentally sound, and you're going to put yourself in position to make, you know, win a game. You know, don't give up explosive plays in the pass game. Be physical up front. Play downhill. You know, keep everything inside. Funnel it back into your help. Those are the things that, you know, I think fundamentally he is as good as anybody's ever been. You know, he's adapted a little bit, but he doesn't go crazy. He's not, you know, saying, oh, hey, we got to go shotgun every play. He's got a little bit of that in there when needed, but He's doing the same things Jim Meeker did in 1980.
Yeah,
and
he really is.
He's very good at it.
He loved Jim Meeker. I mean, you talk about a guy that he patterned a lot of his early coaching. He's had a lot of different jobs, Holgate, Hilltop, those early years. He talks about Jim Meeker, and Jim Meeker was very good here. He got a program that was dormant in the 70s and got him to a playoff game and 9 wins in 1980. Vickers were on those great teams, so he was very impacted by Jim in those early years of his coaching.
Well, and I think probably the biggest thing with Coach Vickers is he understands that it's not about the X's and O's I can draw on the board. It's my Jimmys and Joes. Can they execute what I'm asking them to execute? Be fundamentally sound, keep it simple, and be patient. And that's the thing, he's going to be very patient on offense. He's going to be very patient on defense. He's willing to take a 15-play drive and drain the clock, and he's willing to make you do that as well. Don't give up the explosive plays. Make them, drive the field, and eventually they'll make a mistake. So that's kind of what we're going to be facing this week, and it's going to be big, physical, strong Delta team that's patient, and they're going to come right at you.
We got a little taste of what we're going to see this week against Otsego. Maybe not like in formational and structure offense with the wishbone and the option, but to your point, they will take that long drive. Otsego was able to run the clock out on us, got just enough first downs until we tightened it down a little bit, made some plays. But Delta will do that. They'll constrict that clock. They'll shorten games. They'll depend on a turnover or two, and next thing you know, you're in a ball game with Delta.
Oh, absolutely. I think they were down with PH 14-10 at the half, and they took the opening kickoff and took 10 minutes off the clock and scored a touchdown to take the lead. And he, being down 4 points didn't faze him. He knew if we can milk the clock and work it and get a score, we're up, and we've shortened the game, and we lessen the opportunity for them to score.
And maybe they're going to panic like, whoa. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of time to answer. The possessions start to get pretty narrow at that point.
When you really minimize the number of times or opportunities you have to score, a lot of coaches kind of get antsy, and then they're looking for, we got to make a big play
explosives
here, and we got to press a little
bit. There's a pick. There's a pick. There's a fumble.
And now you're out of your game plan a little bit. He doesn't do that.
Yeah, the patience, and certainly when you win 200-plus games, you've been to a lot of playoff games, state semifinals. And again, all credit to Mike Vickers. I mean, everywhere he's gone, every team has gotten better. I mean, just his record is clear, so you just know you're going up against a great coach. When you have that, when you go up against a Bill Insaman or a Mike Vickers, and you're a pretty good coach yourself, big guy, you're approaching 100 wins, does your approach change a little bit knowing these patterns of these coaches and the execution level and the discipline that these programs have and the success they've had against Liberty Center historically? Does that change anything for you, or is this every day the same thing for you?
There are little tweaks that here and there when he's willing to take 3 yards. We got to make sure, not necessarily schematically we're going to change anything, but our mindset, we got to really make sure the kids understand that them getting a first down is not the end of the world. We don't have to panic. They're going to be patient. We have to be patient. We can't get, antsy and things like that. And, so you kind of change your approach in some ways that way. And that's what great coaches do. They force you to do that.
They've been in some shootouts, and they've been in some real tight possession games. It seems like Delta can play it both ways. If they can score points on you. If you want to give it up, Mike will stick with it. And then they'll get in these games where it's all about the clock and first downs like you talked about. When you look at a Delta team that can do that, can outscore you but also can shut you down and run a clock, I mean, I know that you have a way that you want to approach each game, but when you look at a team like Delta, what's the first thing you think about? Like, what's going to make us successful?
I think third down is going to be real big.
Yeah.
We have to obviously convert third downs, keep the chains moving, but defensively we got to get off the field on third down, because I think like a 3rd and 5 for Delta is not really a big deal.
And they'll go for it on fourth down.
If they get 2 yards, 4th and 2.5 is
manageable.
Right up their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So you have to, like I said, be patient defensively. We got to create maybe somehow get them behind the sticks. So we need to have a play where we get maybe a no gain or a negative gain early in the downs where they don't have 3rd and manageable. I think if it's 3rd and 5 or less, that's exactly what they're looking for, because they know what they can do, and I think field position plays into that. A 4th and 2.5 at their own 30-yard line isn't as nice as we're at the midfield or 45-yard line. Now we're more into 4-down territory. So that field position, I think, plays into that as well.
Well, we knew the back end of this schedule was going to be a lot better than maybe that first half, although there was some good games. And it's going to prove to be that. Some really good league contests coming up for Coach Casey Moeller and our Liberty Center Tigers. We host Delta this week. Mike Vickers, one of our favorite sons, comes back. And you have to know he's excited about getting back to Liberty Center. He has lots of friends here. the 1980 team was a great team around here, and Mike was a part of that. Jim Meeker, we've talked about that. So there's extra motivation, and he says there's not.
Yeah.
But you know that he's excited to come back. I know there's lots of respect between you and Mike, lots of cooperation, lots of Liberty roots. There's lots of good feeling with Mike coming back to Liberty Center.
Sure, yeah. He's got grandkids that go here.
Yeah.
So, he's got ties. This game means a lot to him, and he's an excellent motivator, and his kids will be motivated.
And if anybody knows me, I like to play Delta myself. Always like coaching against them. And somebody tells me I live in Delta. They make fun of me all the time. I'm not sure that's the truth. But my kids go to Liberty Center. I know you were about ready to drop that on me. You've been doing that since I moved into my house 18 years ago. But regardless, exciting. Liberty Center 7-0. We're a 7-win team coming off a great win against Evergreen. And this is going to be a fun game for a lot of reasons. And if you know Mike Vickers, you know Delta and the history of the two teams, should be a lot of fun. We wish you a lot of luck this week. It's going to be a big week for you.
Thank you.